Morning YouTube, this is Joe Calton with Calton Cutlery. You can visit me on the web, caltoncutlery.com. Okay, so today we've got a video on a new horizontal belt grinder that I just built. I wasn't going to quite shoot it yet today, but we've got a warm spell here. Yesterday and today is supposed to be 60 degrees here. You know, at the beginning of winter, which is really nice because you get to catch up on all those you know, get ready for winter projects that you didn't get done. So yesterday and today I'm working on you know, that old McCormick WD6 tractor of mine. You know, I picked it up, it's a good tractor and everything, but I swear most of the hydraulic hoses on that thing, on the loader attachment, they must be original equipment because I've already popped 2 or 3 of the things. And every time one of those hoses pops, man, it doesn't like break in half because, you know, they're braided steel hoses, but it'll pop a hole in the thing, and man, you will get hydraulic. I mean, it's like a fountain. I mean, I think the first time it happened, there's still hydraulic oil on the roof of my shop on the side that the tractor normally sits on. I mean, heck, that's 20 foot up in the air that spray of hydraulic fluid went. So, so yesterday, it's getting, I got all the hoses replaced, so every single hose on the whole tractor is new, and replaced both of the cylinders that run the tilt on the bucket. So today it's just firing it up and checking for leaks, which will be pretty cool, but it's a really old, loud tractor, and I don't really want to fire it up quite yet. I'm going to let the neighbors wake up naturally before I, you know, make a whole lot of racket. So anyhow, today we get to say goodbye to my other horizontal grinder with the small wheel attachment. And it just so happens that, you know, as I was putting this up on the bench, one of the legs broke off. So you guys have seen this in other videos. It's a Delta, I think it's a little bitty 3rd horse motor, hard wheel grinder that is variable speed, which is why I picked it up to build this. The idea was that, you know, I'd make a little bitty 1x42 horizontal belt grinder. You know, that way I'd have a small wheel attachment set up all the time. And eventually, when I built the thing, I was going to use it for pocket knives. Well, you know, some projects work out better than others, and this is one of the ones that that didn't work out so good. This thing is noisy as can be, and it runs way too fast, and the tracking is just awful. So anyhow, I decided to go ahead and build a nice one. So let me go get it, and that'll show off the, well, actually, so it sits right over here. Okay, so this is the grinding room. I guess we'll go over that right now. You guys have seen the grinding room. So this is where the majority of the grinding happens, right? So grinding, roughing in handle materials, you know, grinding blades, you know, the bevels, all that kind of stuff. Profiling, I mean, you know, this is the grinding room, right? So this is, I guess you could call it a dirty room. I mean, look at these buffers right here. Well, you can tell how much I use a buffer also, but so this right here is the room where the heavy grinding happens, and it's got the filtration system, you know, the fans that are pointed this way to bring fresh air from the shop in, and then the fans down here, you know, with the furnace filters on them to suck the air from, you know, the ground and pull it out back into the shop and then filter it on its way, creating like a little cyclone effect in here, which works really good. But, you know, it's also limited in the space. So this grinder right here, the horizontal belt grinder, is more like a detail type grinder, mostly for use with the small wheel attachment and then also with pocket knives. That's kind of why I built it. So it stays out here with the little bitty 1x42 and the 2 disc grinders, right? So let me back you up. So we'll get to why that's important when we go over the build specs. Okay. So first off, you saw how easy it was to wheel this out, right? That's due to this cart. I was gonna, actually like weld together a stand for it and everything, and then put wheels on it. And then I thought, well, wait a minute, this is the cart that the other grinder was sitting on, and the other grinder is now, that little Delta 1x42. That's actually going to turn into a wire wheel grinder, I think. I think I'm going to go ahead and strip the guards and everything off of it and mount, see if I can't find a brass wheel and a steel wire wheel, and use it for, deburring and whatever you use a wire wheel for. Just play with that for a little bit. So anyhow, these stands right here, I've got, I don't know, 3 or 4 of them, something like that. You pick these up at any big box store, Menards, Home Depot, Lowe's, wherever. They don't come with wheels, but you can get the wheel kit for them. I think the wheel kit's like 20 bucks, and the shelf setup, it kind of depends on what size you're getting. I think the big one that I keep my my dry wood on right here, I mean, it's pretty tall. It's 6 foot tall, 4 foot from here to here, and I want to say 18 inches from here to here. I want to say that setup cost about 100 bucks. So something like this is maybe about 50. That should be about with the wheel attachment, I want to say. And I want to say this one has, oh yeah, this one's got locking wheels. It's got a lock on the wheel right there. I mean, for 50 bucks, you can't hardly buy the steel and the wheels to be able to weld together something like this. And it's a really nice cart. Okay, so that's the stand and everything. The base plate. The base plate I made out of 1/4 inch thick, just 1/4 inch thick mild steel, just something I had laying around in the shop. I guess I can grab a tape measure and get you some measurements. Although if you build one yourself, a lot of these measurements aren't going to matter because, I mean, if you build like I do, you build out of the scrap pile first. So you got all your scrap piles, right? And, so that's steel that you've already bought or you found or whatever. When you're building a new project, shop in your scrap pile first, get whatever you can out of there, and then go buy, new steel for whatever else you need. So anyhow, the base plate is 13 inches by almost 36 inches. I guess we'll leave that handy. And this is the first time that I built a grinder like this, where you just bolt everything to a base plate like this, and boy, let me tell you, it works out really slick. All right, so we got the stand, we got the base plate. Next thing is going to be the motor and the control. Okay, so this one right here, this is also the first time besides that little Delta one that I've ever bought a brand new motor for a grinder build. My other motors from my other grinders have come from the salvage yard. The 3-wheel grinder in the roughing room in the corner, that motor came out of an old treadmill I found off the side of the road. The salvage yard, pawn shops, you name it. This is the first time I've ever bought a brand spanking new motor for a grinder build. And I went to Amazon and I got pretty much the cheapest 3-phase, okay, that says Hallmark, 3-phase AC motor. It's a 1-horse, 3-phase, 60 hertz, 208 to 230 by 460, 1725 RPM, pulls 3.6 amps at on the 220 side. Totally enclosed, fan cooled, which for this job I don't think it really matters. And then it tells you what your frame is. Okay, this one has got holes so that you can mount it like this, and it's also got a foot back here so that you can mount it you know, that way. There's your wiring box. The controller. Ever since I've been building grinders, everybody talks about variable speed, how great it is, VFDs, all that kind of stuff, right? Honestly, like I said, most of my motors have come from the salvage yard, which means that I know, like the 2-horse motor that's on my variable speed grinder, well, it's the one on the left, the upright that's on the left. I want to say I picked that up for $30 at the salvage yard, and it's a totally enclosed, fan cooled 122 or 110 220, depends on how you want to look at it, motor that runs really good. So, you know, being used to spending that kind of money on a motor and having to put out, I think it was 175 for that motor, and then like 170 for the controller. You know, that's kind of big money for somebody that's used to buying parts from a salvage yard. So this right here is a, so you'll want to see the top of that. I can't see up there, so hopefully in there you'll get a clear picture of it. But anyway, it's a KBMA series AC motor speed control, and it works pretty dang good. So what I will say about this, and you'll see that here in a second. So I bought the motor and the controller brand new off of Amazon, right? Get it to the shop, wire it up, you know, on the bench without even the motor or the stand or anything, just to see if it worked, because I had some time, you know, it came in, I was ordering parts before I built the whole thing. And the motor spun and everything seemed, and the speed ramped up and came down like it was supposed to, so I thought everything was going to be okay. I go ahead and build the grinder, and then, you know, I'm wiring it up like for real. And so these have got, well, no, I've already got it plugged in. So, you know, you've got your power coming in on this side, right, which is 3 wires. You got your ground, your neutral, and your hot, right? And then on this side, you've got, no, we will unplug it. That way you can see how I've got it wired. So anyhow, the motor that I, you know, this motor down here, it didn't have a ground screw. Well, this is my first time with 3-phase and with VFDs, so I thought, well, heck, you know, not really sure how that goes, but they didn't have a screw for a ground, so maybe they didn't need the thing. Come on, there we go. I'm going to turn you around so you get better light. There we go. So that's how I have it wired up here. So you got your neutral, black, and ground from the wall. Okay, and then right back here, you can probably barely see it. There's a black wire right there, which I have green tape around here to signify that that's a ground, because the extension cord that I used, I'm using that ground as one of the legs. Okay, I suppose, you know, you could use the regular ground, and that way, you know, everything would be, you know, kind of okay, and then run that third wire, you know, a different wire. And then these right here are the 3 phases. I don't know that it matters which ones they are. I don't remember seeing anything on the faceplate on whether it was reversible or not. I mean, I've wired this thing together and pulled it apart several times, and every single time the motor ran in the same direction. But anyway, so I got it all hooked up and then plugged it into the wall, and I kind of noticed pretty much right off the bat that when I touched the center of the speed control and one of the box screws, I'd get a little shock. Well, you know, it's winter time, and so you get an awful lot of static electricity, you know, in the winter time, especially when it's dry outside, which in Wyoming it almost always is. And so I thought, well, it's just static electricity, you know, it happens on the other grinders occasionally. So I didn't think too much of it. Well then, I was showing my wife the grinder. She came out here, and I had my hand, there we go. I had my hand resting on the frame, and I reached up to touch the control knob, and I got quite a bit bigger of a shock. Now that time I was like, okay, well, that was definitely not static electricity. And so what's going on here? So I thought, well, we need to go ahead and put a ground wire in between the box, you know, the ground wire there, and the motor. So I did that, and then plugged it in, and it immediately tripped my GFI. It didn't trip the breaker, but it tripped the GFI. And so I thought, well, that's kind of weird. So I called up whoever this outfit is, KB Electronics. Called them up, talked to a real nice lady on the phone. We ended up emailing back and forth. Come to find out, this model right here, which is the KBMA-24D, the part number, or variation of it, whatever, is 9533J, which is in parentheses right after the model number. Apparently this model right here does not have software that supports use with GFIs. Okay, now building codes depends on where you are. You know, they're wanting GFIs in your garage. Okay, garage, shops, all that kind of stuff. So I only have one circuit here in the shop that is a non-GFI circuit, and that is the one that's in the grinding room. So I went ahead and wired it all back up with the ground and everything, plugged it in there, great. It worked, starts, runs, no shocks, everything's cool. The lady at, you know, from the KB Electronics also sent me a really cool 3-page article on why that works, which, you know, I can wire stuff up most of the time, and I kind of sort of understand how it works, but there's no way I could explain it to you. I'm not that good at electronics yet. So anyhow, so this grinder, like I said, is supposed to be a detail grinder, which means it's going to be out here in the shop. I didn't want to you know, run an extension cord to the grinding room to be able to run this every time I wanted. And like I said, the main use for this grinder is going to be detail handle materials and pocket knife work, right? So I decided that where I wanted it was pretty much kind of in, you know, this area right here where the benches are, okay? Because like if you're fitting up a pocket knife, you know, and you're setting your spring height up, you know, you'll have your rupel gauge on the bench. You'll put the blade up, make a measurement, take it off, want to grind some off. Go right back to the rupel gauge. So when I get to doing the next pocket knife, it'll be one of those, okay, the rupel gauge is here, you know, set up the knife, pull it off, grind a little bit. Put it back on, measure it, pull it off, grind a little bit. That's what this machine is mostly for. So what I decided to do was this circuit right here. There you can see it right there. Okay, so that circuit right here comes in from the ceiling, you know, which comes from the breaker box. Comes in. The GFI used to be on this side, and then it came into that GFI, and then that GFI protected this outlet. There's one back there for the microscope, one right there for the laptop or whatever, one for battery chargers and everything else, right? Okay, so I didn't want to take the whole circuit and make it, you know, non-GFI. So what I did was I just brought in, I swapped these two around. So now this is a non-GFI outlet, and then it powers the GFI outlet, and then the GFI outlet powers and protects all the outlets over there. And then of course I wrote, you know, no GFI on here, so that if anybody else comes into the shop or is working in here besides my boy, then they'll know what's going on. Anyway, so now after all that, let's go ahead and plug this in. Okay, we got that plugged in. We got our control box back on. Okay, let's take the tape measure up. So we finally get to see the thing run. And it's a doozy, it really is. On off switch. Now you can run this thing so slow. Now it kind of chatters a little bit. But so slow that you can read the writing on the back of the belt as it's turning. And then we get it up around about 35% or so. This motor does have a little bit of wobble, and it's the motor itself, because without anything hooked up, you can see that the motor has got some extra vibration. So around 35, I think. Yeah, we're at 34 there. You can see it. I want to say it goes away about 45. There's 46, it's going away. 50, it smooths back out. There we go. So it runs pretty good, and it's quite a bit quieter than that little 1x42 grinder is. Okay, so now we got the stand, we got the base plate, we got the motor and the controller. Let's see. So now we'll start talking about how it's all bolted together. So the motor itself is just bolted through, you know, the 4 faceplate bolts. The wheel I bought from, let's see, this wheel and this wheel I bought from, you know, I can't remember, but I'll put a link in the description for that. I'm going to try to put links in the description for the VFD and the motor and some of the other parts that I picked up. So anyhow, you know, I have casted my own wheels out of aluminum and turned them on a lathe. And honestly, for the $40 each for this wheel and this wheel, plus $10 shipping for, you know, finished wheels, with a key already installed in this one, or the keyway installed in this one, and the bearing installed in this one, you know, it's kind of tough to justify dragging all the casting equipment out, you know, melting down aluminum, making the mold, casting the wheels, turning them on the lathe, you know, all that kind of stuff for 80 bucks. I mean, it'd take me all day to do that. So for 80 bucks, it was pretty well worth it. The tracking mechanism. Okay, this is the first time I've built a tracking mechanism like that, and we'll take the belt off so that you can get a little bit better look at it. I got this idea from the dude from, I think his channel's called Simple Little Life. And I'll try to put a link in for the video that I got this off of, but you can see it's pretty dang simple. Now the size of all this I don't think really matters all that much. Like I said, this is what I had in my scrap pile, and this stuff is, I want to say 2.5 inches wide. The base plate part here is 6.5 inches long. I want to say it's 3/4 inch thick stock. And there's 4.5 inches to the top of this off of the base plate. You drill a hole in this piece. This piece right here is 1 inch by 1 inch square. This right here is you just drill and tap a hole in this to accept your the bolt that holds your wheel, which in this case is a 1/2 inch bolt. I used washers to keep the to keep the pressure on the inner race of the bearing, not on the outer race of the bearing. That way the bearing works really nice. You can see some of the oil is coming out of it. Okay, there's a stop welded in between these two upright pieces. Okay, now this stop right here, I did grind the face of it to 220 before I welded everything together, so it's nice and smooth. And then this right here is your the bottom of your tracking screw, which I ground it to 220 also and rounded it off real nice so that it won't dig into the top of that, because all this is mild steel. The adjustment knob, I want to say it's a 5/16 bolt, 5/16 by whatever the coarse thread is. It does have a locking nut and a washer. Okay, you'll notice that on almost all of my machines, the tracking the tracking knobs are almost always T-handles. I know a lot of guys like, you know, a round like a knurled knob like that, but I like the T-handles. I like the T-handles because the T-handles give me a visual reference of where that setting is. Okay, so when I put this all back together again, you know, and I'm working on it, I can look over here and I can, you know, I mean, as you get used to your machines, you get used to what everything looks like. Okay, well, if I look over there and I see that this T-handle, which is normally supposed to be in this position, if it's clear over there, well, I know something's wrong. Well, first of all, if it's clear over here, that belt is going to be riding up and hitting somewhere where it shouldn't be, right? But that just gives me an indication that, okay, well, you know, that's where it's set at, which is why I like the T-handles better. This piece right here just hinges on a bolt back here. When you put this bolt in here, what I did was I grabbed one that was too long and has the shoulder, so this is all solid. The threaded portion starts here, which is outside of where the pivot portion is going to be, so those threads can't like start cutting inside that hole and start binding up. I did oil this right before I put it in. Whether that oil is going to stay there or not, I don't know. But the tracking, this tracking system is really, really nice. So, you know, you tighten it up and it lifts the wheel up. Lower it down or loosen it and it drops it back down. Like I said, that's about where it normally sits. For the spring tension, the simple little life fella, he used a like a strut, like off of you know, the thing that holds your hatchback, like on a hatchback car or SUV, you know, that holds that back window open so it doesn't hit you in the back of the head when you're taking your groceries out. He used one of those. In this setup right here, it being long and narrow to get the four wheels in, I didn't think I had enough space for that, so I used the tried and true spring clamp. Okay, and this just sits in there. I mean, it's not bolted down or nothing. The nice thing about this, besides it being cheap and already bought, and, you know, literally I needed a spring, so I reached up there and I grabbed a spring and I slapped it in, drilled and tapped a hole for a bolt, bam, spring tensioner, right? The nice thing about this is that if you need to adjust it, you just move that, you know, drill and tap another hole. Or you could, you know, probably take this and put a piece of wood back here, you know, to act as a shim that would increase your spring tension. You know, it just kind of depends on what you need. Let's see. So the next up is the small wheel attachment. Small wheel attachment is one of the biggest reasons that I built this grinder. Okay, so this small wheel attachment is very, very cool, and I'll have to put a link to the fellow that he said he didn't come up with it. He came up with it from a guy off of Facebook, but it is a pretty amazing small wheel attachment and very economical also. Okay, so these small wheels here, these are a flanged bearing, which he'll have a link to. He'll have a link to where he got these in his video, I think. The center piece right here there's the coffee can that holds all the extra parts and pieces. So this one right here, I want to say is 3/4, 5/8. That one's 1.5 inches. I have, and of course I didn't press the bearings on all that well, but I don't think it really matters. I've got a 1 inch, the naked one that's a 1/2 inch, which I'll get to that in a second, and then the 2-inch version is over on, well, the 2-inch version's on the other end that we'll get to here in a second. Okay, so now the trick to these, I mean, basically, is this rubber part. You get it off of small parts, e-replacement parts, one of those places. And what it is it's rubber from a spindle sander. Okay, it comes in 2.5-inch lengths. Okay, so 4.5-inch lengths. So each one of those rollers, you cut it in half, and you get a 2.25-inch wide piece. All right, flanged bearings that get held inside your holder here. All right, and then the center of this rubber is a 1/2-inch diameter. All right, well, and then the center of these bearings is a 1/2-inch diameter. Okay, so what you need is something that, because this flange right here is what holds that bearing in place. Okay, so it can't come out. All right, so you need a shoulder to be able to stop that from going into there. So what that guy said was to use this, which is electrical grounding rod for houses, right? I got the smallest chunk I could get of it was at Home Depot, and it was 8 foot long. The really funny thing about this stuff is that they sell it in 1/2 inch, 5/8, 3/4 maybe, and 1 inch, something like that. Well, so I just took a micrometer with me into the store, and the 1/2 inch wasn't even anywhere close to 1/2 inch. The 5/8 inch is 0.550, if I remember right. So I'm not sure who on earth was doing the measuring, but last I heard 5/8 of an inch was 0.625. And this is 0.558. Okay? So 5/8 of an inch, that's 0.558. You know, I don't know, but that does make it really nice to where you don't have to touch the center portion. It's a press fit on the rubber. I mean, you have to press it in with the vise. And then you just turn a small shoulder on here with your lathe. If you don't have a lathe, honestly, get a lathe. Okay? I mean, your life will be so much better with a lathe than what it was without a lathe that you'll wonder why you didn't do it sooner. If you can't get a lathe, find a really good buddy, that's got a lathe, or maybe set up a small turning setup on your drill press. I mean, I've seen some pretty good ways to do that. Anyway, so you just have to turn little ends to fit, your bearings, and then I used a milling machine to cut these pockets right here and then cut the ends out. It was really cool. It was the first time I've ever used a boring bar on my milling machine, because I just bought the milling machine not too long ago, and I'm still learning about it. And the whole thing is just drilled and tapped bolted down to the base plate with some holes there. So anyhow, so it works really good. And then the belt tension holds everything in place. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put this, like I said, I think that's 3/4. We're going to go ahead and put it back in place there, because that's what I'm going to use next for the next job that I do here. And we'll go ahead and put the belt back on. Now this part right here, putting the belt back on at the moment, is a little on the wonky side because all the work rests are still fairly tight. You know, here in another 6 months worth of use, as that belt comes in and wears against the work rests, you know, it'll kind of waller them out and things will be a little bit easier to work. So let's make sure I got it all set right. Okay, so now the the work rest for the small wheel attachment, this is kind of a cool little setup. What we have there is a clamp. You might not be able to see that all that well. Let's grab the handy dandy little flashlight. Okay, so we've got a, you can probably see, I'd have to get on the floor to be able to see what you're seeing there. But we have a piece of 1.25 inch square stock, and it is bolted to a holder. This holder right here, or a piece of angle, and that's bolted up to the table. Okay, this has got a 1/2 inch hole drilled through the middle of it, a slot cut right here, kind of on an angle to go to the center of that hole. A threaded bolt hole here, you know, to make a clamp. Then it comes up through the center of the table, or through the center of the base plate. Oh. And then, I guess we don't need the light anymore. And then that rod is welded, plug welded into here. Okay, so I've got it set to where the amount of tension that it has, you know, you can slide it back and forth, you know, to do your belt changes or to get it farther away from the wheel or closer to the wheel or whatever. If you want to adjust the height, then you have to loosen that tension bolt up. I've got some boogers up underneath here I need to clean up. And then you can raise it or lower it to whatever height you need it, or to use different portions of the belt. So now that's set about right. Okay, so then we go to Platen, and these are just pieces of 3 inch angle that's been, you know, bolted on here. This one right here has got these are slots, you can tell in there. So I can raise and lower this. I can also tilt it one way or another if I need to. These I do need to slot these out so that I can move the table back and forth. This right here is the same as that setup over there, only I didn't cut this top portion because I wanted to keep this a 2 inch wheel pretty much all the time. These work rests right here are again from kind of the Simple Little Life Dudes idea, and they're just pinned. Wow, they're a really tight pin. Okay, well then that one can stay there. This one, I think, yeah, this one pops out easier. Okay, and all they are is pieces of that 1 inch square stock with the 1/4 inch pins. And they just slip in there like that. And hang on just a second. Okay, I'm back. I had somebody come into the shop. I needed to talk to him right quick. Where were we? Okay, so the Simple Little Life Dudes pinned work rests. You know, I think for this side of the grinder right here, where you know, I might not need a whole lot of extra clearance, I think these right here are going to work just fine. Now, the way he's got how he made them in his video, so there's no reason to go back over it. But they work out really, really slick. I will say that making these portions right here, what you do there is you take your piece of square stock, you drill your hole for your pin, you put your pin in, you plug weld the top, right? So you weld that pin in place. Then you grind the top of that piece off flush. Then you set both of those where you have space for them. Then you set your table on top, then clamp it down, and then come up in here, tack weld these, pull them off, put them in your vise, finish welding them up, okay? Now, and of course these things they'll loosen up. There we go. As the grinder gets used. Okay, so a couple of more things. Now, to adjust these, you can use extra plates, right? So just slap another plate on, and that'll get you another 1/4 inch high. Slap another plate on, now you're a 1/2 inch high. Slap another plate on, now you're a little bit more, you know, if you need that kind of height adjustment or to use up the belt. You can also raise and lower your belt to a small degree with your tracking, okay? I have used the 1 inch wide belts. You know, you just take a regular 2x72 belt, split it in half, and then, you know, that 1 inch belt, you can, you know, there's enough room in the tracking system in this that you can bring the bottom of that 1 inch belt flush with the top of your work rest, and then, you know, go down and be able to use up the entire width of that belt, which is pretty cool. So I'll probably end up keeping a couple of belts split, you know, and keeping them on hand. One thing, I haven't really figured it out yet, or I haven't really, I mean, I've noticed it, but I haven't spent enough time with it to pay attention. But when you're using used belts, you know, so you use a belt on one grinder, and then you go to use it on another grinder, you know, these tracking wheels, are crowned. Okay, so that means they're larger in diameter in the center than they are in the edges, okay? That will stretch a belt, okay? So if you take a new belt, you know, it's probably pretty flat, all right? Well, as you've used that belt and it runs over that crowned portion, the center of it will tend to be, it'll want to ride higher than the edges on like a Platen, right? Because it's being stretched out by that wheel. So sometimes you can take a belt from one machine, put it to another machine, and it'll kind of throw your tracking off for a little bit. Let's see, the plates, they'll work on any of these, you know, plus on the flat Platen if you need them to. So that's cool. You can also, and they don't have to be steel. You can use wood for something like that also. Let's see. So pretty much, I think the grinder's about done. I mean, besides just working with it and adjusting little bitty different things and tweaking, you know, things here and there, you know, moving this back a little bit. For example, like this work rest right here, there's a little bit of a wobble to it, or at least it was yesterday. Oh, there, it wasn't set down all the way. There's a little bit of wobble right here, and that's because I didn't have room to have this turned this way because the bolt is in place. So I'll probably just come back and weld another piece of that 1 inch square stock to the corner to where it'll sit on the base plate back here. Get in there. There we go. And that should fix that wobble. You know, maybe fine tuning the belt tension, you know, just playing with a little bit, see if it needs a little bit more, a little bit less. And then deciding, you know, what wheels I like best for whichever job. I know, like for these Carter pattern neckers, up in here is, man, that's small wheel territory there. I mean, you can spend an awful lot of time with a piece of sandpaper around a dowel, you know, hand sanding all that, or you can build a small wheel attachment. Now for this, you wouldn't even, I mean, I guess you could use the table and then just come up in there and smooth it out, and then swing the table out of the way, and then, you know, chamfer the edges of that. But boy, let me tell you, having a small wheel attachment set up all the time for a knife maker is pretty slick. Oh, I do have to build another one of these small wheels. It's over on the lathe right now, but I'm taking one of the naked ones that doesn't have any rubber on it. And like I said, it's 0.56 or 0.558 diameter. And I'm going to take the center portion of it and turn it down to, I don't know, 1/3 of an inch, something like that, maybe 350 thousandths. Those are still mild steel, so I don't think I can go to like 1/4 inch or so. I think the belt tension, and if you were a little bit heavy-handed, you'd probably bend that as it was rotating, which probably wouldn't be such a good idea at all. But 1/3 of an inch, you know, to let me get into, you know, like curves up in here, where this is way too big right now. A smaller one would let me get up into there. So all in all, I'm pretty dang happy with the way that the build turned out. And I'll try to put a cost in the description what it came up to be. I want to say right now, I think it was 300-ish for the motor and the drive, or the motor and the drive. I want to say maybe $50 for the small wheel attachments, and you know, all the wheels, which, like I said, I got a 2-inch, 1.5 inch, 3/4, the naked one that's a 1/2 inch, and then I've got another naked one that's a 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to make one that's like 1/3 of an inch. So $50 for, you know, 7 small wheels, plus the holders that go with them. You know, that's not bad. And I want to say I picked up, then $80 for the, or $90 for those 2 wheels that I purchased. And then, I don't know, maybe $30 in extra steel from the salvage yard or from the steel yard. You know, so, and then maybe an afternoon and a half to put the whole thing together. So I'm pretty excited to have the new addition to the shop and the stable of grinders, and to get used to playing with it. So the amount of power that it has. Let me grab a piece of scrap. Because I know somebody's going to want to ask how much power the motor and the drive are putting out. Okay, so the motor is a 1 horse. I will say right now that I don't believe that with this setup, 1 horse is equal to a 1 horse with like a straight up 110 type motor. It's either that or I've got too much drag in the system. I'm not really sure, but this doesn't quite seem as powerful as a normal belt grinder made out of a fixed speed 1 horse single phase 110 volt motor, but it does do pretty good. So we'll take this piece of 1/4 inch angle iron, and we'll turn the machine on to full bore or full speed, and then we'll grind a little bit at each station, and then you can kind of see. Now this is a fairly worn. I wouldn't use this for grinding any blades, but for profiling, it's still got quite a bit of life left in it. Norton Blaze 36 grit belt. Okay, so Oh, so you can also, you don't have to turn the knob each and every time you turn the machine on and off, okay? So you can set it at 20, flip the off switch, and it turns off. You turn it back on, it comes back on at that same speed, which that is really cool. So let's turn it all the way up. Okay, we'll go to the small wheel first. Okay, again, not really a racehorse, but for a finish grinder, I think it's pretty good. Now the Platen. Not so bad. Okay, so two more things I think, and then that'll be about the end of it. So this is why I wanted to set up a four-wheel grinder so that you could use 3 wheels. You could set it up to where you had 3 wheels available without changing anything, okay? So now without having, without, feathering in any of the different angles, I've got, that's 3 different contours of wheels without changing anything, plus a flat Platen, right? Which I think is really cool. Now, the one that originally I wanted to try out was Chris Crawford's video with Luke Swenson or Swanson. He has got a 4-wheel setup and rubber-coated drive wheel, which I think is really cool. And I was going to build that type of version because then he had 4 wheels, and then the tracking wheel was like inset. So he actually had 4 wheels that he could that he could grind on, because grinding on a tracking wheel doesn't really work out all that well from what I've seen. But honestly, I mean, this is what I had. This is what makes sense to me, so I went ahead and built the thing. And I've got other wheels, on the upright grinders. One of the big things that I'm hoping that this will help me out when I do pocket knives is, let's say you're, because pocket knives have got parts that interchange with each other. So let's say you're grinding, let's say this is a whole pocket knife, right? And you're, let's grab a pocket knife. Let's say you've got a pocket knife and, you're putting the thing together and you're wanting to square up the back portion, right? Okay, well, if you're trying to hold that to a wheel on an upright grinder, and this time you square it up like this, and then the next time you square it up like that, and then the next time you square it up like that, it's not repeatable, okay? I suppose you can build like a vertical work rest so that you can slap it up and then put it into the wheel or the Platen. But this right here works so much nicer. I mean, once you have this shim to where it's at 90 degrees, bam, it's at 90 degrees. You put it on there and you can grind it and then come back, change belts, and it's going to be the same each and every single time. Okay. The same thing is on the little curves. So not so much on liner locks, but like on slip joints. You know, when you're getting like that portion of the kick, here's one. My friend Jeremy McCullen made me this. But this portion of the kick in here, you know, you can take that and put it up on the 2-inch wheel and then cut that in and know that that's at 90 degrees to the rest of it. So then if you have to come in and take a little bit more off, you're not riding on a high spot here and a low spot there. You know, and maybe you just get rid of the high spot and then that completely changes your lock geometry. Okay, so now you know you're going to be at 90 degrees each and every time. I said two things, and that was one of them. And I can't. Oh, so the second thing is this thing throws sparks in a much different manner than what I'm used to with the upright grinders. Okay, so you'll notice that when I ground here with the grinder here, then when I went to grind here, I swung the table out. That's because this thing is throwing sparks in, you know, a horizontal manner instead of a vertical manner. Okay, so when you put it together and you start using it, just keep in mind, like this, had I used this one, you know, here, it'd have been shooting sparks up underneath where my air compressor is, and some of those might get up in there and stay in there for a while, you know, and who knows what they're going to run into when they get back in there. So just bear in mind, I may end up making like I might make like a shield, you know, just a piece of tin that gets screwed onto this 2x4 right here and goes around the back, and then that way, you know, that part right there will be kind of an area where the sparks can't go. But anyways, so like I said, I'm pretty dang excited to have this machine and to start playing around with it. I think here pretty soon I am going to build another grinder for the grinding room. Another 3-wheel grinder that's going to go in the right hand corner, because I don't really use a buffing machine all that much. On that grinder, I think I am going to go with a different drive, because I have another one of these motors over here that's 1.5 horses. These are only rated to 1 horse. And this, although it is a nice enclosure, it's not, I would call it like a dust resistant enclosure. Okay. I mean, it fits up, you know, pretty tight. You can see there's some shop dust right there that's not getting into the motor. It's just sitting on top, or it's not getting into the drive. It's just sitting on top. And you can see that I taped up the extra mounting holes in the back. So for a detail grinder that's going to be out here, I'm not too worried about this type of enclosure. Okay. In the really dirty grinding room, I think I'm going to go with the nicer, more sealed up type of VFD. You know, I want to say that's it. Like I said, I'll try to put links to, you know, all the parts and pieces that I put in the description, and you know, the other two guys' videos, you know, the one on the small wheel attachment and the one on the tracking setup. And yeah, so yeah, if you want to build one, go ahead and build it. This hopefully this video will help you out a little bit. There's probably 6 videos on horizontal belt grinders. But with anything, you know, I like to be really detailed. That way, if you're watching this, you know, you can certainly use the fast forward and the rewind buttons. And then, you know, it's better to give you more information than less. And that way, you know, if you got a question about any one of the different pieces, then you can go back and watch it until you get it. So again, this is Joe Calton with Calton Cutlery. You can visit me on the web, caltoncutlery.com. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoyed seeing the new horizontal belt grinder, and we will see you next time.